I'm Dr. Jeff Kaplan, and for over 30 years I've traveled the globe from Dubai to Moscow and Johannesburg, from Singapore to Shanghai and Istanbul. I've studied the world's best businesses and the people that run them. But something is very different now. From the boardroom to the break room, there's a growing realization that our relationship with work is broken. But it's not too late. You still have a choice. Hold on to the past and struggle to survive, or join the willing, change, and thrive in the world of tomorrow that's already arrived. So if you're willing to think different, willing to work different, willing to change at the speed of now, then you're willing to win. Hello, everybody, and welcome again. I am Jeff Kaplan.
And I'm Tara Thomas Getman. It's another week of Willing to Win. Always a pleasure to be with you, Jeff.
It's a pleasure to be here as well, and it's a pleasure to greet all of our Legion members growing each week. We are so excited by the feedback we are getting now.
Yes, thanks to everyone for joining the movement as the Legion continues to grow. We need to kick off today with a fun topic that will pique individuals' interest just from the title. It's the trash story. Tell us about this.
Well, I think today we're going to talk about the trash story. It's something that I've been doing for years, and I encourage other people to do it. And it's really, it really typifies the mentality of the people that we want in the Legion. Now, the trash story is really all about a process I have with my family. And like many of you out there, you probably, have families. You might be raising small children, or my children are a little older, or almost empty nesters. But ever since the beginning of building the family, I have instituted a policy where every Friday here is trash day. And so I take the trash out and I come back in and I gather my family up and I tell them that I've taken the trash out. I then demand one hug and one I love you. But it goes further than that. I'll go up to the store and I'll get some groceries. I'll come back with those groceries. I'll put them down on the kitchen table before we start putting them away. And I'll say, family, I have gone to get you groceries because I care about you and I love you. And then I demand one hug and one I love you. Now, Tara, do you do this already? Have you adopted this in your family?
We have not. We are not doing that.
And I'll bet there's a lot of people that are listening right now that are saying, what is this guy talking about, right? But the story is really indicative of a point that we want to make here today. In the relationships that matter most, your family, right? These are the ones
Absolutely.
that you can count on through thick and thin your entire life. The best relationships we'll ever have in our life. The pattern that flows over that relationship is pretty straightforward. We get to know somebody. We give a commitment to them, whether it's verbal or just over time. That it's an unspoken commitment, right? That commitment exists, and what we do for those people is we learn everything we can about them. We learn what their needs are, and then we go out into the world and we do our best to create opportunities not only for ourselves, but for them as well. And the love and affection, which are the transactional components of any relationship, those are the byproducts and not the focus. And wait a second, these are the best relationships we'll ever have in our life. And love and affection, the transactional components, are byproducts, not focus. If this is the best practice for the best relationships that'll last the longest, Tara, why would we do anything different at work?
Yeah, great point.
But that's exactly what we do, because at work, it's all about the transaction. Let's get those dollars and cents down first before you get any of my value. In our company, in Lyft, and we've talked about Lyft, the consulting company that I'm a co-founder in our company, we have a thing called Value Now. And Value Now is we find out a way to give our customer something of value the first time we meet them. We go to work for them, right? And rather than spend time on proposals and convincing them how we're better than somebody else, we just come to the table with some work product and say, hey, would you like to have more? Right? Would you like to work? Completely different approach, but it's all based on the trash day, the trash day theory. And that is that we do for our family what we need to do to make them successful, and that love and affection will be the byproduct. We do for our customers what we need to do to make them successful, and the financial remuneration and additional work and a growth of business become the byproduct and not the focus. That's a big key.
It's interesting, though, because when you talk about sort of that traditional approach, focusing too much on sort of the bottom line and the transactional aspect and not the human emotion involved, that old adage, customers always right, really kind of comes to the forefront here, because if you work in retail, if you work in any kind of business relationship, as I have when I years ago worked in Better Sportswear in a department store, I was told the customer's always right. Hands down, period, end of story. And as we've sort of evolved in society, today we've come to a place where that human approach, that emotional component, is now a factor perhaps driven by the world of social media, right? Because a customer experience, or for that matter, an employee experience, he or she is now empowered to share that story regardless of the employer's sort of edict that's coming from on high that customer's always right, no questions asked. And that came into play recently when Rudy's Tacos, a Midwestern establishment, went viral because some customers came in and essentially not only disrespected the employees, but the manager who was there felt he was not being treated with the kind of respect that he is extending to his customers. And it should be, the expectation is it should be reciprocated. That's what's changed with these employer relationships.
I got to tell you, when I read that, I think it was a 2 or 3 paragraph post, right? And in the first paragraph, they talk about the fact that, every customer will be treated with respect. And so naturally, I was assuming that they were responding to an incident where one of their employees was disrespectful to the customer. And I really didn't think much about it. And I was wondering why it was getting so much play, because that's sort of a standard, right? We're not going to yell at the customers unless you go to that restaurant in New York where they yell at you. Or there's one that, that they do that on purpose. But besides that, right, you would expect that. But then you get to paragraph 2, and it said, but we also demand, that our customers that come to us and are customers of ours when they come into the establishment, that they show the same respect for our employees. And if you don't show that respect, don't come in here. And I just thought that was...
It blew me away. It's a new concept, right? But this is exactly what you're talking about, because those employers are empowered to show what? Affection and love to the very people that are showing up every day and making all the sacrifices to keep the business going.
Right.
They're on the front lines. So we did reach out to the manager in this situation, and though he declined an on-camera interview, he did have this to say, and it's really interesting. Listen to this. In my 10 plus years in the service industry, I have never been treated with more disrespect than what was shown to me from this couple, in this case, bringing in a large party to their establishment. I'm just glad I was there on this night, so my staff didn't have to deal with this. I don't care what your last name is or how much money you have. All customers that enter my front doors are going to be treated, now I'm losing my spot here. I don't care what your last name is or how much money you have. All customers that enter my front doors are not going to be bad customers, but gracious customers. I mean, that's a huge shift. What a statement, right? To be essentially saying, I don't want your business unless you're going to treat my employees with the respect that I've, sort of come to expect for them. But beyond that, the employer is setting boundaries to ensure that that actually happens. And that's the catch. A lot of people feel that they go to work, show up, and there's a lot of empty promises. But in this case, the employer is putting, his money where his mouth is, so to speak, because they're putting it in writing and backing it up. And I think that, to me, is why, as you describe, there is a shift in terms of the social responsibility that employers have today, because it's not just about the product, it's about how you feel when you go to that restaurant or when you buy that product.
Yeah, think about 2 things in your statement. Number 1, the social responsibility has always been there, but the profit motive hasn't, right? And so now if we do this shift where it's not the transaction as the primary focus, but instead, making this relationship with customers long-lasting and mutually beneficial, then all of a sudden the rules have an opportunity. We start shifting those rules, and that's what we're seeing here now. We're seeing that, it's a two-way street, and the customer, isn't necessarily always right, especially if they don't live up to some basic values about personal respect.
And this is happening all over the country. People see it all the time, right? These posts on Facebook or other social media platforms, they go viral, they take on a life of their own. And as I said, the customer now is empowered by way of being able to share that experience, that transaction in detail with the masses. When it comes to everything happening in this past, year, so to speak, of the pandemic, all of the customers, all of the employees, all of the employers have really had to reevaluate how they do business, and then also recognize that in some cases, there's a limit to how much you can push people physically and emotionally. And all it takes sometimes is that one customer to sort of interject some kind of negativity or attitude where it can really send employees over the edge when they already feel that they're stressed and pushed to the max. We caught up with a soul food restaurant owner to talk about how the way she runs her company, the way she has responded in the challenges that the pandemic brought to the food service industry have really changed the game, not just for her, but for her customers. And guess what the result is? Or the employees, I should say. And guess what the result is? The customers are responding with a continued commitment to wanting to give her the business just because of how she's treating the people that work for her.
Yeah, cause marketing doesn't have to be, save the whales across the world. It can be, let's show our support for a way of acting, self-respect and respect from one another. That can be the cause, and it can be incredibly local. I love this story.
Tell me a little bit about your business, and I know it's a family affair. Talk about it.
For sure. So we started Vivian Soul Food in 2017. It's my husband's dream. He wants to be a restaurateur. So we've now opened actually a second location, and his dream is much larger than that. So there might be more in the near future. It's named after my mother-in-law. When he was trying to decide what to name this restaurant, he had all these trendy different names. And I'm like, you're going to left field. And when I think soul food, I think of your mom. That's who taught me how to cook. That's who taught you how to cook. A lot of the recipes are home based, right from our family recipes and things that we made at home prior to having the restaurant. I said, so let's call it Vivian's. It sounds like soul food. It fits well. That's what I think of. So that's how we came up with the name. So it's named after my mother-in-law. My husband is the executive chef, if you will. He does all of the cooking. He designs the menu itself, makes changes as things are necessary, does the inventory, the food stuff. I do all of the front of house and also business administration portion. So I manage our license and our certifications, our workforce stuff via the state, our federal stuff. I do all of our social media, and then I make sure that we are staffed up as far as front of house employees, servers, to go, host, bussers, bartenders, etc.
Wow. So you're taking on a lot, wearing many hats. Let's talk about how you navigate that world of employer to employee relationships, and then how that extends to your customer engagement.
I think it's an ever evolving relationship, to be really honest. I come from a corporate background. I actually still work in corporate America. And so I think that what I learned coming into small business and into the restaurant industry, the food industry especially, is that you just naturally develop these really strong bonds. You really start to care about the people that you're with and that share your mission and work hard for your business. So I used to be a little bit more black and white into the book, and I was writing a ton of policies and processes. And I learned over time that they were more responsive to me when I was just there getting my elbows dirty with them and kind of showing by example rather than making them sign NDAs and agreements. And so that's kind of how our relationship with our employees is based now. We try to be really transparent, really open and upfront. Our team, as the business has evolved, we've gotten a lot bigger. So we can't do really intimate things like we used to, but we used to actually have some of our team over to our home in the backyard for barbecues on Mondays when the restaurant was closed. We celebrate holidays. We still do an annual party every year, that type of stuff. Now it takes place a little differently. We have to be in a bigger space because there's too many people. But I just try to make sure that they feel supported, excuse me. So whatever that might be, I don't give them a hard time about uncontrollable things in life that come up that's going to cause them to miss work or be late or have a bad day, whatever it might be. And I think that as a result, that makes it so that way when things that are within their control, they work a little harder to be there because they know I'm not going to fuss when things happen out of their control, you know. Lots of learned lessons, though. We'll say, there is a balance to getting too close and being supportive and whatnot. So we do try to just maintain that as well. But I really care about them. And most of the people I will say that work for us, they truly care about the business and about our family as well.
Well, you've done a great job capturing the essence of what you just described in your social media posts about Vivian's. In fact, I know sometimes you've shared sort of the good, bad, and ugly of what goes on dealing with the customer service exchange industry. Talk about how you've used social media to really build your brand. But beyond that, you've really caused the customer or the person who comes across you on social media to feel like they have an emotional connection to what you're doing because you're so open with the things that you share. Can you talk a little bit about that strategy and why you were willing to really put everything out there?
Yeah. So when it comes to our social media, I've really tried to create like a personality of Vivian's. So it's not my thought. It's not my husband's thought. It has nothing to do with our personal thoughts. It's truly like what we choose to post, what I put out there. It's a collective of all of the emotions, the wins, the opportunities, the learning things that have come across the plate that I've heard of and overheard my entire team talking about, things I witnessed take place in the dining room or in the kitchen, wherever. So I try to post just really an array of all of those things together, accumulated, and it's Vivian's voice is what it is. It's the restaurant's voice. I think the other thing is that I'm a rather intuitive person. I sometimes will go days without posting, and then I'll have days where I post 2 or 3 things in one day. And the reason why is because if I don't truly feel it, if I don't believe it, I'm not going to broadcast it. So, sometimes some of the staff will say things like, will you post something on Facebook so we can get busier? We really want to have a big rush tonight. And I'll look around, and if it feels really good, if things feel right, then yeah, I'll take a picture. We'll figure out something to post. But if I'm like, I don't know, we got off to a little bit of a rocky start. We were kind of behind. Some of those feelings have carried into this shift, and I don't want to set you guys up for failure. So I don't want you to get, bombarded. Let's go with, whoever comes. We'll go that route. So it is truly just based off of vibes and collecting kind of all of the emotions, the thoughts and what's going on in the business among the team collectively, not just from any one person situation or strategic marketing plan.
Were you surprised at how receptive the social media audience was to your content? When you talk about going viral and really creating a buzz, you've been successful in generating a lot of interest, which I assume has translated into customers. So talk about that process.
Okay, so first question, am I surprised by the buzziness behind Vivian's Soul Food social media? 100%. Yeah, 100%. Because when I post, it's real and it's authentic and it's what's happening and it's how we're feeling. And I know that there have been some things that I've posted that might be viewed as controversial. Also, when we opened originally in 2017, 4 years ago, there was a lot of political things going on. And my husband is very aware of public perception. And so he would, forbid me for sharing certain things or using even certain political or certain colors that might have a political tie or insinuation, stuff like that. And so we've always been really aware, but in the last couple of years, especially in the last 18 to 24 months with COVID and the pandemic, it was just I can't hold my tongue anymore. What we're feeling is what we're feeling. And so we just kind of go with it. And I think all of my posts, especially the ones that I know could have some type of backlash or just could have an opinion that's not in agreement with us. My goal is when the reader is done reading it, that there's at least some type of lesson in it. Even if they don't agree with what we had to say or how we're feeling in that moment, that there's some type of lesson. And so that's kind of my way of like softening the blow. You don't have to agree with me, but understand that we're real people. And there's always like a takeaway that I hope that they have.
That's great. What is your advice to other entrepreneurs, business owners, people who know that social media and the world of consumers being empowered to have a voice thanks to these platforms? What's the advice when it comes to how much or how little they should engage?
I think my advice to that would be mindful. Don't spend too much money trying to buy Facebook advertisements and whatnot. I think all over the internet it says, oh, you have to sell your ads and you have to get on a marketing strategy and have these planned posts. I have tried those strategies like a couple times. They never got the engagement that I've gotten when I'm just authentically us. And so my advice is to avoid trying to follow someone else's plan. And if you do it and if it works, hey, good for you. But it's really a mission of ours, my husband and I, that we earn our customers because we have a good product, because we have good service, and not that we are just social media popular. And so we try to be as authentic as possible. And that's just my most genuine advice. Don't just post on a schedule. Post when you feel like you have something you want people to know.
That is a great point, and we so appreciate your insight. Thank you so much to Miss Smallwood, Vivian Soul Food. We just really know that what you're doing is innovative, and I know others can learn from some of the lessons that you've learned and are willing to impart. So thank you so much for your time. Willing to Win, we remind you, is executive produced by Lyft Innovate, one of the fastest growing tech consulting firms in the world. Lyft works with some of the largest companies in the world, and the mission is to bridge the gap between the world's best technologies and the people that use them. As always, a special shout out to our executive producers, Paul Bernstein and Steve Reisner, for making Willing to Win possible. And we need you to join the Legion. Go to our website, willingtowin.org, win.org, and let your voice be heard. You don't have to just, keep it private on your Facebook feed. Join the masses, join the movement, and share your story. There's a simple form you fill out to join. We won't hit you with a bunch of spam. We won't ask you to buy anything. In fact, we might give you away something free, like this cool Willing to Win t-shirt that some of the Legion members have already won. And you too will have a chance to win some swag just by signing up on our website. Each week, we like to include what we call the uplift in our broadcast, and it's really empowering in that this movement, the Willing to Win approach to life and to how we devote so much of our time to work, is hopeful. We don't have to be sad and depressed about knowing, right, that we have a lot of work days ahead of us, most of us. So tell us what this week's story is about.
Yeah, and the uplift too is just really for you to understand some of the tools that you'll need to help you carve out a position for yourself in this conversation. We're renegotiating the future, right? And I think one of the tools that everybody's going to need to be able to take a look at what's happening around them and really understand it and put it in context is really to start to understand the difference between two words that a lot of people use as if they're synonymous, and they're not, right? The words are leadership and management. Leadership and management. You hear them exchanged all the time, or people using them, and maybe they don't necessarily know the answer. As a matter of fact, when I started my doctoral program, the very first session, they bring you in and they do one of those things like out of the movies. There's like maybe 300 of us in this new class. And they say, okay, look to your left and look to your right. The person on your left will flunk out and the person on your right will be divorced, right? By the time it's done, because the divorce rates are so high and the pressure's so high, right? But they gave us a great opportunity. That day and that day only, they brought out Bass and Stodgel's Handbook of Leadership. It's 12 pounds of definitions of leadership, 150,000 definitions of leadership, right? And they said, we're going to give you 3 hours. All you have to do is pick a definition of leadership, because my doctorate was in organizational leadership. You pick a definition of leadership and you successfully defend it today, and we will skip the 5+ years that it's going to take you to get this degree, and we'll award the degree this afternoon. Right?
Wow.
And so everybody worked really hard to try to do that. And I will tell you, nobody came even close, because we hadn't begun to start thinking about the implications of what leadership really means, right? And so in the past, you might have heard, some of the different theories out there that were more popular, like, leading by example. Leaders lead by example. They lead out in front, right? And a lot of times that's great, but what if what they're displaying isn't something that we want the people behind to model, right? What if the leader, the CEO, is a workaholic that spends 80 hours a week, at his job or her job, and demands that everybody else in the office does that, and because they're so stressed, they snap at everybody, and so everybody thinks that's the way they should respond. And they never take a vacation, so nobody else takes a vacation. Right? These are all the things that can be really negative from that, and it really doesn't begin to say what a leader is. Not a leader does. We need to know what leadership really is. And so I spent my entire time, in the program, and I wrote my dissertation to defend the definition of leadership that I came to accept. And I want to share that because we've adopted it as the willing to win Legion definition of leadership versus management. And it may sound academic, but just bear with me, because once the definitions are out there, I'm going to tell you what the implications are, and that's going to change everything, right? Managers deal with complexity through the application of process. Dun, 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 right? No, there's more, I promise. So managers deal with complexity through the application of process. Now, leaders deal with change through the alignment of resources. Leaders deal with change through the alignment of resources. So let's think about that. If a manager deals with complexity, oh man, we got to figure this out, right? Through the application of process. Okay, we're going to put a process in place, and then we're going to go and try to improve that process, improve that process, improve that process. That's what managers have been doing, and that's been the focus of business for 50, 60, 70 years, right? Now, does that remind you of anything? When we have something and we're trying to get a little bit more out of it, but the most we could do, there is a maximum. That reminds us of what we talked about in our last episode of a zero-sum game versus a win-win. There's a maximum. Once a process
you have a limit.
Yeah, once a process is in place, how can we do it? So for a generation, we have been running our businesses to try to squeeze one more 0.5% out of the bottom line each quarter, right? And there's only so much you can do, right? And when you're not succeeding, that adds pressure. People change the way they act toward each other. The whole attitude of the organization is different, and it's a different mentality. It means that you're always looking backward to your performance on the process last time to try to get that extra little bit going forward. Now, leaders, this is what's exciting. Leaders are completely different. Leaders in the zero-sum game, in the P&L, if managers manage the L, right? This we want to try to get the most out of that. Leaders manage the profit side, right? Leaders deal with change through the alignment of resources. And where does change come from? It doesn't come from the past. It comes from the future,
correct?
Right? And so a great leader is someone who's looking out on the horizon, right? Looking out on the horizon line. I don't know if you know it or not, but you can look as far on the earth until the earth starts to curve. That's 25 miles. So they can look out 25 miles across a flat space and see the future. And they can see change coming everywhere, all directions. So what a leader does is they look at that change and they say, when that change gets here, I'm going to take these resources I have, time, expertise, money, people, opportunities, and I'm going to reorient them so when change comes through our front door in Tokyo, we're there. When change comes through our front door in Europe, we're there, right? So what they're doing is they're aligning the resources so when change comes, their companies can be more competitive. How much more competitive? Unlimited. Managers have a mindset that's a scarcity mindset. Leaders have a mindset that is an abundance mindset. And that is really one of the most, the biggest differences that we're starting to see now, that we're really starting to see leadership take place. And I will tell you, many of the things that are taking hold and why the Legion and the Legion conversation are so important is that social media and technology are giving everyone a platform, right? So the fact that we talked about those two businesses taking the sides of their employee, that just means that there's a platform and everybody else is going to run to that. They're going to reward that. And then Adam Smith's hand, right, his magic economic hand that he wrote about, the hand of the economy, will move to reward those businesses, right? That's not about profit. Nowhere in there did it say how much. It was a taco place and
soul food
restaurant, right? And nobody in there says this was the cheapest in town. Nobody said it was the best food in town. And I'm sure they are great prices, and I'm sure they're great food. But that's not what the point is. The point is this platform is rewarding economic benefit to somebody who's taking a social stand. Right? That feels a lot more like aligning resources with the future than it does trying to squeeze another quarter cent out of a process. And it reminds me, I'm good friends with Jim and Becky Mudd. They own one of the largest advertising agencies in the Midwest in the car industry, their automotive industry. They're amazing people. Jim Sr., the man who founded the company, once talked about, and this is 20, 30, 40 years ago, he was talking that there would be a future where everybody had their own TV station, right? And while that can be true on YouTube, anybody can do that. What it also means is everybody's got a platform now. Everybody's got a platform now. So when we lead and lead by example, our example is going to be judged, and not just by the people in the room who you own or control because you pay their salaries. It's going to be judged by the people who pay you. And we have to have organizations that act, a lot more like we would expect someone to act. And the thing is, the new challenge, what we call the New Leadership Challenge, that's the name of our first book in the 5-book series for Willing to Win. The New Leadership Challenge is how do we optimize an organization so that the organization runs efficiently, the employees have an optimized experience both in compensation and in their mental health and their work-life balance, and how do we best benefit our customers and our vendors and partners, right? That optimization across a group of people rather than maximizing a single transaction, organizations that start thinking like that, they're going to be the winners. And the last thing I just want to say on this is this sort of brings up the topic. I think I've talked to a lot of people. I actually saw somebody with one of these shirts in town the other day, so I struck up a conversation with them. And I think that our first, if you've only had episodes where you've been exposed to people talking about how the worker experience is going to change, just know that Willing to Win is just as much about training and identifying tomorrow's CEOs and leaders and entrepreneurs as it is the people that work in organizations, because we need them to be on the same page, because we're not trying to negotiate against them. That's zero sum.
Absolutely.
We're trying to negotiate with them because we have an abundance attitude.
That's great. It's that collaborative spirit that can only be lining us up for success down the road. Well, thanks so much for sharing all those details, and thanks to you for really helping us to write that story. We want our listeners, we want the Legion to have a voice. So go to willingtowin.org, willing2win.org, and sign up, share your thoughts, upload your video, be a part of this important conversation. Have a great week. And thanks again to our executive producers, Paul Bernstein and Steve Reisner, who helped make Willing to Win happen, co-host Dr. Jeff Kaplan, and yours truly, Tara Thomas-Getman, correspondent Alyssa Nolte, researcher Emily Hammer, our floor and studio management, courtesy of Mike Carlo and Deb Neerman, graphics and still photography, Susan Langman, lighting, also Deb Neerman and Mike Carlo, makeup and hair, Sheila Kaplan, post-production, Brendon Hagarty, and the whole MUD team. Thank you, all of you, for making Willing to Win possible.